My sister-in-law tried to ban my adopted daughter from the party, but 32 relatives fought back, and she was thrown out in shame. The text lit my screen like a match. Don't bring that outsider. I looked at my 11-year-old clutching a sparkly outfit and a handmade card, and realized tonight wouldn't be about an engagement, it would be about who gets to decide what family means. I tried to steady my breath, but when I glanced back at Sophie, beaming with pride over her carefully wrapped gift, I knew I had to protect that light at all costs. Sophie, my 11-year-old daughter, was in the kitchen, showing me her clothing. I am excited about my sister's engagement celebration tomorrow. We had adopted her 4 months before, and she was still in the trying to prove herself stage, so family events were quite important to her. She had just finished wrapping the engaged couple's gift when my phone rang. It was Vanessa, my sister-in-law. Don't bring that outsider to the engagement party. This is for real family only, not some random charity case you picked up to feel good about yourselves. I looked at the message with disdain. Sophie looked up from the phone before I could move. That's about me. Her lower lip trembled. I tried to turn the phone, but she had already noticed it. I'm an outsider. She was now sniffling in between phrases. A charity case? The tears started rolling. I'm not real family. She was practically in tears. But everyone hugged me at Christmas. They do love you. I tried so hard to be good for you. Now she was weeping. I saved for 3 weeks for their present. I thought if I got them something nice. She wouldn't finish. Am I going back to foster care? That devastated me. I drew her into a massive mom embrace. Listen to me. You are never going back. We are going to that party. Vanessa doesn't get to decide whose family. But she said I don't match. Then we'll make you match so perfectly she can't say a word. I removed the tears. Do you want to wear the sparkly outfit you chose? Her eyes brightened up slightly. The one with rainbows. Every single rainbow. I texted the screenshot to my husband. He rushed downstairs, and his jaw tightened. He knelt beside Sophie. Vanessa said that about you? She nodded. Well, Vanessa's about to learn what happens when you mess with our daughter. Sophie's eyes widened as she heard the term, daughter. My phone rang. Go get your sparkly outfit, we're adding to it. My sister Julia is getting married. Mom just forwarded me Vanessa's text. I'm livid, put me on speaker. I did, in fact. Sophie, honey, I need you at my party. In fact, I have a special job. You're going to help me with something secret. Sophie smiled. Really? Really? And wear your best outfit. Vanessa texted Sophie again as she tried on her outfit. Just confirming you received my message. I assume she will not be there. I did not react. My mother-in-law called though. I saw Vanessa's texts. That woman married my son, but she's never been family like Sophie is. She heard. Grandma said I'm family. Baby, you've been family since day one. That's when my teenage nephew, Vanessa's own son, emailed me. Mom's being weird about Sophie. I'm wearing a matching sparkly bow tie tomorrow. Vanessa's own kids were rebelling. We quickly went shopping for accessories such as glittery platform shoes, diamond-shaped hair accessories, and a rhinestone-encrusted pocketbook. Is this too much? Sophie inquired. It's perfect. Vanessa's going to lose her mind, I told her. She smiled. Good. Sophie prepared another gift that evening, a large handcrafted card with congratulations and stickers for everyone in the family. Vanessa contacted my husband, but we let the message go to voicemail. I'm not trying to be mean, but tomorrow is about Julia, not your little charity project. I'm thinking of Julia's happiness. The family group chat erupted when Julia declared, everyone wear something sparkly tomorrow, even if it's just a sock to match Sophie. Vanessa quickly texted the group. Julia said, that's not necessary. Sophie practiced walking in her platforms, saying, yes, it is. What if Vanessa blocks the door? Then we go through her, my husband responded. But what if? No what ifs, you belong there. Sophie changed into her full attire the following morning. Do I look like I belong? You look like you own the place. In the car, she hugged both gifts. Mom, what if nobody else wore sparkles? They will. What if Vanessa says something mean? Then everyone will see exactly who she is. We arrived at the venue. Vanessa was stationed at the entrance, like a guard. Her countenance changed from confident to volcanic as she saw Sophie in her sparkling glory. But before she could say anything, Julia came through the door in her dress. "Sophie, my special helper." She raced over and scooped Sophie up. "You look perfect. Come on, we have work to do." Vanessa's mouth opened, but Julia had already whisked Sophie inside. The entire family was there, all dressed sparkly, grandparents in glitter bow ties, aunts in glitter scarves, and Vanessa's own children in rhinestone accessories, the newest addition of our family. Vanessa stood motionless as her own children ran to embrace Sophie. "We love your outfit. You look like a disco ball," her teenage son exclaimed. "This is our cousin Sophie, everyone." Julia raised her glass while toasting. "Before we celebrate, I need my special helper." She drew Sophie up next her. "This amazing girl joined our family 6 months ago and made it complete. Sophie, will you be my flower girl?" The entire venue erupted. Sophie's hands rushed to her mouth. Vanessa's face was purple. Julia nearly burst into tears as Sophie handed her the family card. "It's perfect," Julia said. "This is going in our wedding album." Vanessa tried to dispute the mess, but Julia's fiancé yelled, "This is what family does." Vanessa stood up, documents in hand, and began moving to the center of the room. She cleared her throat aggressively. Vanessa raised her arm high, clutching a stack of papers in her fist. "Everyone needs to hear this." The entire room became silent, and every single guest turned to look at her. Sophie's small hand gripped mine so hard that I felt she'd break my fingers. "I have documentation here about adoption fraud that proves this child does not belong in our family." Vanessa waved the papers around as if they were winning lottery tickets. People began whispering and looking at us and Vanessa. My heart was racing, but before I could react, Julia was storming across the room in her engagement gown. She reached Vanessa in approximately 3 seconds and pulled the papers right out of her grasp. The sound of paper tearing filled the still room as Julia ripped them apart without glancing at what they stated. "Anyone who doesn't support all members of this family can leave right now." Julia hurled the ripped pieces into the air, which fluttered down like confetti. Vanessa's face turned purple, and she began yelling about evidence, legal guardians, and the fact that we were not Sophie's biological parents. My husband stepped forward from behind me, straight up to Vanessa. "You need to leave this party immediately." His voice was calm, but his hands were quivering with rage. Vanessa started shrieking that she had proof and that everyone should know the truth about our unlawful adoption. Marcus eventually pushed past the mob, as if he wanted to dissolve into the floor. "Vanessa, please, let's just go." He reached for her arm, but she wrenched it away, yelling about attorneys and papers. Marcus turned to face everyone, his cheeks flaming red. "I'm so sorry about this." He reached for Vanessa's elbow to help her to the exit, but she pushed him back. Claire Monroe, the venue manager, appeared with 2 security guards right behind her. She walked up to Vanessa with a professional smile that did not reach her eyes. "Ma'am, you're disrupting this event, and I need you to leave voluntarily within the next 2 minutes, or these gentlemen will escort you out." Vanessa looked at the security guards, then back at Claire, but remained standing there as if she were rooted to the floor. Vanessa's adolescent son stood up from his seat. "I'm staying at the party with my cousin Sophie." He marched right by his mother and hugged Sophie in a massive hug. His younger siblings rose up and ran over to join the hug, leaving Vanessa standing alone at the exit. My mother-in-law rose from her seat and gently approached Vanessa. She came to a halt directly in front of her and spoke just loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm ashamed of your behavior. Sophie has been my granddaughter for 6 months, and your prejudice won't change that." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. She grabbed her purse and stomped towards the door. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer about this illegal adoption." She slammed the door so furiously that the entire room shook. Marcus remained behind, shoulders down and face still crimson. "I'll handle my wife, I promise." He looked at me, then Sophie. "I'm so sorry." Julia took the microphone from the DJ stand. "All right everyone, it's time for my special flower girl to help me cut the celebration cake." She held out her hand to Sophie. "Come up here where everyone can see you." Sophie stared at me, and I agreed. So she walked up to the stage, where Julia was waiting. Sophie stood next to Julia by the large cake, and the entire audience began to shout and cheer. People were taking pictures and complimenting Sophie on how beautiful she looked in her glittery costume. Sophie appeared to be about to collapse after the cake cutting, so I brought her to the venue's prep area. She burst into sobs as soon as we entered and locked the door. Her entire body shook as she cried into my shirt. "Can Aunt Vanessa really take me away?" She could barely speak between sobbing. What if she has real papers? What if the adoption wasn't done right? I hugged her as tightly as I could without injuring her. "Listen to me, baby. Vanessa has absolutely no power over our family. The adoption is completely legal and final. No one can take you away from us." She started crying and asking what if questions about lawyers, courts, and foster care. I simply kept hugging her and told her over and over that she was ours forever, and Vanessa couldn't change that. Her glittery dress was disheveled from how tightly she pressed against me, but I didn't mind. We waited in the prep room for what seemed like an eternity while she cried out her concern over what had just happened. I could hear the celebration outside, but all that mattered was that Sophie knew she was safe and loved, and she would never go. Julia entered the prep room, holding a little silver box that gleamed under the lights. She knelt next to Sophie and opened it, revealing a crystal tiara with tiny rhinestone flowers. Without saying anything, she carefully placed it on Sophie's head and adjusted it to suit exactly with her dazzling attire. Sophie's eyes widened as she touched the tiara with shaky fingers, and Julia drew her into a lengthy hug. I saw them hugging each other as the celebration music played softly through the walls. Julia mentioned something about family being about choosing to love one another, and Sophie nodded into her shoulder. Marcus stepped inside after hearing a knock on the door, his hands in his pockets. He requested if he could talk to us alone, and despite the fact that the room was chilly, I could see sweat on his forehead. Julia gave Sophie one last embrace before telling her to go show everyone her new tiara. Sophie walked slowly out, still stroking the gems on her head, as if she couldn't believe they were real. Marcus slammed the door behind her and leaned against it, his shoulders slumping forward. He began telling how Vanessa had been trying to adopt for 2 years without luck, and how seeing us with Sophie made her insanely envious. His voice cracked as he admitted he should have stopped her sooner, but he hoped she would settle down on her own. I wanted to be angry with him, but he looked so miserable standing there, apologizing over and over. We returned to the celebration, where Sophie was besieged by relatives who wanted to touch her tiara and tell her how beautiful she looked. Sophie's smile grew larger as the photographer continued to pull her apart for photos with various family members. Grandma made careful to capture a photo with just the two of them wearing identical glittery accessories. Vanessa's children remained close to Sophie the entire time, as if they were sheltering her from their absent mother. Sophie wore her tiara throughout the party, even as we ate cake and danced. Sophie stood in our bedroom doorway, clutching her beloved bear, and begged if she could sleep with us. She climbed into the center of our bed and curled up small between us, pressing her back into my chest. My husband reached over and grabbed her hand as she questioned Vanessa's ability to take her away. We spent hours in the dark assuring her she was stuck with us for good, and that no one could change it. She fell asleep holding both of our hands, but awoke twice crying from nightmares of attorneys and courts. We had to repeat the assurances and embracing until she calmed down enough to sleep again. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, my phone rang and it was Marcus, who sounded worried. He stated that Vanessa had spent the entire night on her laptop researching adoption rules and printed out articles regarding contested adoptions. He was trying to divert her, but he wanted us to know she wasn't abandoning her mad scheme. I hung up and quickly called our adoption lawyer, who had handled Sophie's case 6 months before. When I told her about Vanessa, she chuckled and said there was nothing a sister-in-law could do to oppose an already finalized adoption. She offered to prepare a formal letter if necessary, but stated that Vanessa had no legal standing whatsoever. While I was on the phone, our family group chat became inundated with messages from guests at the celebration. Cousins and aunts were posting images of themselves with Sophie, all wearing glittery accessories and expressing their joy that she had joined the family. Someone shared a video of Sophie receiving her tiara, and it quickly garnered thousands of heart emojis and comments about how adorable she was. Vanessa must have seen all of the messages because she started her own group chat, which excluded us and everyone who had defended Sophie. She tried to convince people that we were concealing information about the adoption and that she was concerned about Sophie's background. Only 2 distant cousins answered, and both advised her to drop it and quit causing trouble. Marcus emailed me screenshots of Vanessa's chats, and I could tell she was becoming increasingly frantic with each one. Things appeared to be quieter after 3 days, until Sophie's school counselor called me at work. She claimed Sophie had a panic episode during social studies when the teacher discussed lawyers as part of a government lesson. Sophie began crying and couldn't catch her breath, so they had to take her to the nurse's office. Sophie repeatedly asked the counselor if attorneys could take children away from their parents, and nothing they said calmed her down. I left work right once and found Sophie still in the nurse's office, her eyes red and puffy, her glittery purse gripped in her lap. She threw herself at me the moment I stepped in and refused to let go, even after I tried to sign her out. She spent the entire trip home wondering what would happen if Vanessa hired a lawyer and whether judges could force her to return to foster care. That afternoon, I began calling therapists specializing in adoption trauma and family conflict difficulties. The receptionist at one office stated that they had someone named Evelyn Ma who was fantastic with children and had openings later in the week. I scheduled the first available appointment and jotted down everything that had transpired, so I wouldn't forget anything significant. Sophie spent the remainder of the day following me around the home, as if she was scared I'd disappear if she looked away. While I was in the kitchen cooking Sophie a snack, my phone buzzed with a text from Julia. She stated that she will officially remove Vanessa from the wedding guest list unless she immediately apologized to Sophie. She'd previously spoken with the venue management about arranging extra security in case Vanessa attempted to crash the wedding. I handed Sophie the message, and her eyes widened as she realized Aunt Julia had chosen her over Vanessa. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and there stood Marcus, holding a large bunch of flowers and wearing the most embarrassed expression on his face. He stepped down to Sophie's level and offered her the flowers, apologizing for not stopping his wife sooner. He promised to get Vanessa into counseling and asked if we could all work together to fix things eventually. Sophie accepted the flowers but remained pressed against my leg, not ready to fully trust him yet. Marcus stayed for an hour, mainly sitting quietly as Sophie showed him her school projects from across the room. He kept apologizing every few minutes until my husband informed him we had heard him and needed time to process it all. After Marcus left, my mother-in-law called to say she was planning a special supper for everyone who had supported Sophie. She made it plain that Vanessa was not invited, and she wanted Sophie to see how many family members supported her. Sophie's favorite delicacies had already been ordered from 3 different restaurants for the weekend's dinner at her home. That Friday night, we stepped into Grandma's house, which was packed with cousins, aunts, uncles and family friends. Everyone had made Sophie cards expressing how much they appreciated having her in the family. Vanessa's own children had created the largest card coated in glitter with the words, "Best cousin ever," across the front. Sophie sat in the middle of the living room floor, opening card after card while tears streamed down her face. Her teen cousin read it aloud, stating, "Sophie was the coolest addition to their family in years." The smaller children climbed on top of her in a gigantic cousin hug, which evolved into a tickling match. We shot so many images that night that Sophie asked if we may frame each and every card for her bedroom wall. Monday morning I received a certified letter from a law firm that made my blood run cold. Vanessa had issued a formal cease and desist order, saying that we were distancing her children from their mother. She asked us to stop allowing her children to visit Sophie and accused us of turning them against her. Marcus called within minutes after receiving the letter, completely shocked by what his wife had done. He'd already contacted the lawyer to withdraw the entire case, and was headed to the office. 2 hours later, he texted us a copy of the attorney's response to Vanessa. The lawyer had charged her for 3 hours of wasted time, and declined to pursue her matter further. He stated that she had no legal standing to take action against us for a legally adopted child. Vanessa reportedly had a fit in the lawyer's office, and was ordered to leave by building security. Sophie's first visit with Evelyn Ma, the therapist we discovered who specializes in adoption concerns, was on Thursday. I stayed in the waiting room for an hour, trying not to worry about what they were discussing. Sophie smiled as she showed me a paper with breathing exercises Evelyn had given her. She demonstrated the visualization technique in the waiting area by closing her eyes and taking deep breaths. Sophie, according to Evelyn, would do these exercises whenever she was terrified or worried about Vanessa. That night, before bed, I watched Sophie carefully complete each exercise, counting her breaths and visualizing herself in a safe location. She'd chosen our living room on movie night as her visualizing location, with all of us sprawled on the couch together. The next day, we met with Sophie to devise a safety plan in case Vanessa ever approached her. We typed down all of the vital phone numbers on a card for her glittering purse, including mine, Dad's, Grandma's, and even 911. We practiced what she'd say and do if Vanessa showed up at school or elsewhere. Sophie practiced calling for help and ran to the nearest adult, becoming more confident with each practice run. She carried that card in her purse and looked for it every morning before school, like a security blanket. Julia picked up Sophie on Saturday morning for a special girls' day of shopping for flower girl outfits. They visited 5 different boutiques, trying on every style and color combination they could find. Sophie texted me photos of her in each dressing room, whirling in circles and making hilarious faces in formal gowns. They finally discovered the right garment in a small store, white with rainbow ribbon trim that made Sophie squeal with delight. Julia purchased matching shoes and a tiara, as well as a backup dress in case something went wrong with the first. They arrived home with bags of accessories, and Sophie modeled the entire costume for us 3 times. That evening, when I was going through social media, I noticed Vanessa had written a lengthy rant about false families. She did not use our names, but rather talked about adults who adopt children for attention and virtue signaling. The message was definitely about us, describing adoption as a trend for people who wanted to appear good on social media. Within an hour, several family members had denounced the post as harassment and hate speech. Screenshots began to flood our family group chat as everyone expressed their dissatisfaction with Vanessa's behavior. Vanessa deleted the post within 2 hours, or the platform removed it for violating terms. Marcus texted to say he had read the post and was moving into the guest room until Vanessa agreed to get serious assistance. He texted again 20 minutes later, reporting Vanessa was screaming through the guest room door, but he was not backing down this time. Monday morning I dropped Sophie off at school, and she virtually leaped out of the car, clutching a folder full of engagement party photos under her arm. Sophie's teacher called me that afternoon to inform me that she had given a whole presentation about being picked as flower girl during show and tell, replete with images of everyone in their sparkles. Sophie appeared to be more confident recently, standing straighter and speaking louder than she had all year, according to the teacher. That evening we convened a family meeting with our 2 biological children, ages 13 and 15. They sat on either side of Sophie on the couch while we narrated what had occurred to Vanessa. Our oldest sprang up and strode around the room, his fists clenched as he contemplated what his aunt had done. Our 13-year-old daughter put her arms around Sophie and declared that anyone who interfered with her younger sister would have to deal with her as well. Sophie's eyes welled up with tears, but she smiled as her siblings squeezed her between them in a protective sandwich. Vanessa's adolescent son contacted the next day, asking if he could call us via video chat after school. He emerged on screen, weary, and immediately asked if he could still attend the wedding, even though his mother couldn't. We informed him that he was welcome and watched as his shoulders relaxed with relief. He admitted to fighting with Vanessa every day over Sophie's treatment, showing us pictures of their text exchanges in which he called her out for being nasty. He stated that his younger siblings were equally furious with their mother and had been giving her the silent treatment for days. 2 weeks before the wedding, we drove to the location for Sophie's flower girl practice. She wore her real dress and walked down the rehearsal aisle 12 times, growing more confidence with each pass. Claire, the venue manager, observed from the sidelines and took notes on where to place more security on the big day. She showed us the side entrances they'd be watching and described their procedure for dealing with undesirable visitors. Sophie perfected her petal throwing technique, resulting in an orderly trail of rose petals from the back doors to the altar. That night, Marcus called to say Vanessa had finally consented to attend one counseling session, but only to prove she was correct about everything. He seemed cautiously optimistic that a professional could reach her in ways that her family had failed to do. Marcus planned to drive her to the therapist's appointment on Thursday, to ensure she showed up. Sophie put out her painting tools on the dining room table on Saturday morning, announcing that she would be crafting thank you cards for everyone who wore sparkles. She labored for 6 hours straight, making 32 separate cards featuring drawings of each person in their dazzling dress. We spent Sunday afternoon addressing envelopes, with Sophie meticulously writing each name in her best handwriting. She insisted on including extra stickers on the cards for Vanessa's children, who had been extremely supportive. We walked to the mailbox together, and Sophie kissed each envelope before placing it. Marcus texted that evening to report that the therapy session had taken an unexpected turn. Vanessa's therapist had allegedly been extremely straightforward with her, stressing that her behavior may be deemed harassment and that she could face legal ramifications if she continued. Vanessa had gone utterly silent throughout the session and hadn't talked for the entire journey home. Marcus claimed she had shut herself in their bedroom, and he could hear her crying through the door. The following week, Evelyn called to schedule Sophie's usual appointment, noting that she was making excellent improvement. She suggested that we schedule a few family therapy appointments to help everyone process the recent events together. Sophie overheard the talk and quickly requested whether Grandma could attend one of the sessions. She stated that Grandma's encouragement meant everything to her, and she wanted to express her gratitude properly. We booked the family session for the following Tuesday, and my mother-in-law reserved her entire day to attend. The therapy room was tight with all of us crammed onto the couch, but Sophie insisted on sitting directly between me and Grandma. Evelyn led us through a discussion of how the entire scenario affected each family member. When it was Grandma's turn to speak, her voice trembled as she explained how Sophie handled Vanessa's abuse with such grace. She spoke of her pride in Sophie's courage and tenacity, wiping tears from her cheeks. Sophie went to face her grandma and requested quietly whether she might call her grandma from now on. My mother-in-law cradled Sophie in her arms and sobbed, saying she had been Sophie's grandmother since the beginning. By this point, everyone in the room was in tears. Even Evelyn had to get a tissue from her desk. We spent the rest of the session discussing what family truly means, and how love is determined not by blood or adoption paperwork, but by the decision to show up for one another every day. 5 days before the wedding, Vanessa texted me that she would not be attending or causing any problems. Marcus contacted shortly after to confirm she had booked a spa weekend for the same dates. He sounded relieved when he said that she had finally decided that remaining away was preferable to risking another scene. We spent the remainder of the week having Sophie's flower girl outfit changed one more time and practicing her petal throwing technique in the backyard. She'd throw handfuls of rose petals from her white basket, then dash back to collect them all to attempt again. The wedding rehearsal 2 days later went flawlessly, with Sophie walking down the practice aisle at the venue with a huge smile on her face. The photographer, who had arrived early to investigate spots, kept taking photos of her practicing with her basket. She'd linger at each row of chairs to ensure that everyone received petals, and the photographer caught every moment. Marcus arrived at the rehearsal dinner that night with Vanessa's children, who immediately went up to Sophie with their handmade cards. Marcus approached me and mentioned that Vanessa had assisted them in creating the cards, despite the fact that she was unable to attend. The children surrounded Sophie at her table, showing her all of the glitter and stickers they had used to write "Good luck, flower girl" on each one. Sophie insisted on wearing her flower girl attire and the beautiful tiara from the engagement party on the wedding morning. She stepped in front of my bedroom mirror, carefully arranging it, and requested me to snap a photo for her future children. I took approximately 20 photographs while she posed at various angles, making sure the tiara caught the light perfectly. We arrived to the location early so Sophie could practice once more before the guests arrived. Sophie walked down the aisle throughout the wedding, throwing petals with perfect timing and smiling at everyone she passed. Julia hugged Sophie into a deep hug as she approached the altar, before Sophie took her place alongside the other bridesmaids. Sophie stood absolutely motionless throughout the wedding, cradling her empty basket while Julia and her new husband exchanged vows. Marcus stood up during the toasts at the reception and told Sophie how fortunate the family was to have her in their lives. Sophie's face lit up when he referred to her as his niece and expressed his pride in being her uncle. Later, during the dancing, Vanessa's adolescent son approached Sophie and requested a special dance in front of everyone. He exclaimed loudly that she was the best cousin ever, and soon the other kids joined them in this large circle. They were all dancing around Sophie, who was twirling in the center, her tiara shining in the lights. My mother-in-law approached me during a slow song and explained that Vanessa had seen the entire wedding via live stream from her spa. She had not remarked on anything, but she had watched from start to finish, which seemed like progress. Sophie ultimately fell asleep in my arms near the conclusion of the celebration, still wearing her tiara, exhausted by the excitement. Even while she slept, she clutched her flower basket and smiled serenely. Julia approached and whispered that Sophie had made the wedding completely beautiful, and she could not picture it without her. 2 weeks after the wedding, Sophie received a card written in Vanessa's handwriting. Inside, it simply read, "Congratulations on being a beautiful flower girl," with Vanessa's signature at the bottom. Sophie stared at it for a long time before asking whether she may write back to express her gratitude. We helped her write a brief note, and she drew a picture of the entire family, including Vanessa, standing together. Marcus texted later that Vanessa had gotten it and was in tears when she saw the drawing. 3 days later, Sophie approached me with colored pencils and construction paper, asking if she could write a thank you note to Aunt Vanessa for the card. We sat at the kitchen table together as she meticulously penned each phrase in her best handwriting, erasing and rewriting until every letter was flawless. She drew a picture at the bottom of our entire family standing in a line, and she positioned Vanessa next to Marcus, a big smile on her stick figure face. I helped her address the envelope, and we walked to the mailbox where she stood on tiptoes to push it inside. Marcus called me that evening to say Vanessa had received the note, and when she saw the drawing of herself in the family picture, she burst into tears in their kitchen. Marcus visited by our house one afternoon while Sophie was at school to keep us updated on Vanessa's progress. He sat at our kitchen counter, drinking coffee, and told that Vanessa had been going to therapy twice a week since the wedding, and the therapist was helping her work through some profound issues from her own background. Vanessa and Marcus had apparently been attempting to adopt for over 2 years before Sophie arrived, and they had been refused by 3 separate agencies for a variety of reasons that Vanessa took very personally. The therapist explained to Marcus that Vanessa's rage at Sophie was actually envy combined with grief over their own adoption issues, and she was beginning to grasp this now, but she still had a long way to go. Marcus stated that Vanessa wasn't ready to apologize yet, but she was working on herself, which was progress. Sophie's final appointment with Evelyn Ma was the next month, and I drove her to the familiar office for the last time. Sophie virtually jumped into the waiting room, in stark contrast to the terrified teenager who had attended her first consultation months before. Evelyn called us back after the session with a large smile on her face and handed Sophie a certificate she'd designed that said, "Certificate of Bravery," with Sophie's name in beautiful lettering. Evelyn said that Sophie had developed wonderful coping abilities and no longer required regular treatment, but we could always return if something came up. Sophie hugged the certificate the entire way home and immediately requested tape to place it on her bedroom wall, next to her flower girl tiara from the wedding. 6 months after the disastrous engagement party, my mother-in-law asked us all to a 4th of July family cookout at her place. Marcus had informed us that Vanessa would be there, and it would be the first time we'd all be together since our wedding. We talked to Sophie about it beforehand, and she agreed to go, so we loaded up the car with potato salad and drove over. Vanessa was already present when we arrived, sitting peacefully at a picnic table in the corner of the yard. When we stepped in, she looked up but didn't say anything, just gave us a tiny nod before returning to her drink. Sophie remained close to me at first, but relaxed as Vanessa did not approach or say anything harsh. The kids all played together in the sprinkler while the grown-ups grilled burgers, and it was almost typical, except Vanessa and I kept our distance from each other. She departed early without saying goodbye, but Marcus later stated that simply turning up and not making problems was significant development. Sophie's teacher called in September to inform me that she had received the school's citizenship award for an essay on what family means. The ceremony was held the next Friday morning in the gymnasium, and I immediately began messaging everyone about it. My mother-in-law replied she wouldn't miss it for anything. Julia rescheduled a work meeting to be there, and Marcus even took the morning off to attend. Except for Vanessa, the entire family arrived, occupying an entire row of folding seats in the gymnasium. When Sophie's name was called, she came up to the stage and read her essay aloud to the audience, discussing how family is more than blood, but also about the people who choose to love you every day. I cried. Julia cried. Even my spouse wiped his eyes. Marcus had his phone out, capturing the entire incident, and I noticed him texting something shortly after Sophie ended. Later that evening, Vanessa texted me that she had viewed the video Marcus had given and that Sophie's essay was lovely. Marcus texted me separately, saying that was the first time Vanessa had spoken anything openly nice about Sophie, and he saw it as a significant step forward in her therapy. Christmas arrived, and we were hosting the family event at our home. Vanessa and Marcus arrived with presents, and I saw Vanessa take a wrapped box from her bag and walk over to Sophie, who was seated by the tree. She handed it to Sophie with a simple, "This is for you," and went to help in the kitchen. Sophie carefully unwrapped it to discover a sparkly picture frame with a note inside that read, "For your favorite family photo." Sophie dashed to her room and returned with the photo from the engagement party, the one where she's wearing her full sparkle outfit surrounded by the entire family, and carefully placed it in the frame. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I helped Sophie hang the framed portrait on her bedroom wall, next to her flower girl tiara and certificate of bravery. Standing there, staring at that wall filled in memories from this insane year, I understood how much we'd all evolved and grown as a result of the entire experience.